Take a slow breath, settle into a gentle rhythm, and allow your mind to drift far across time. Picture the world before steel towers, before crowded cities, before nations claimed borders. Journey now to a place where civilization once bloomed in quiet splendor, an island embraced by the peaceful waters of the Aegean Sea. This island is Crete, cradle of the enigmatic Minoan civilization and the beginning of our story. Crete lies like a sleeping giant in the Mediterranean, shaped by rugged mountains and kissed by warm breezes that carry the scent of sea salt and wild thyme. Long before history had chapters or scribes, long before great kingdoms rose on the mainland of Greece, people settled here, drawn by fertile valleys, gentle climate, and seas rich with life. These early settlers would become the foundation of a people whose achievements would echo across millennia. No one knows exactly when the first humans stepped onto the shores of Crete. Some scholars believe it may have been more than 9,000 years ago, when the last ice age faded and the world slowly warmed. Imagine small wooden boats carried by the tide, perhaps guided more by chance than mastery, bringing families who sought new land and hope. These first inhabitants were simple farmers and shepherds, living in small communities of clay huts. They grew barley and wheat, tended goats and sheep, and crafted pottery whose swirling patterns reflected the movement of water and wind. Life for these early Cretans followed the rhythm of nature. They rose with the sun, labored through the day, and rested under skies thick with stars. There were no kingdoms, no palaces, only families linked by quiet purpose, survival. Yet, even in these early years, something unique began to stir among them. Unlike other prehistoric peoples who struggled only to endure, the Cretans gradually began to build not just shelters, but culture. As generations passed, their villages grew larger, their tools more refined. Their pottery evolved into works of both function and beauty, decorated with spirals, reedy plants, and sea creatures. Even this early, they were inspired by the natural world, not by war or conquest, but by harmony. This theme would follow the Minoans for centuries. Their civilization was not born from destruction, but from creativity. In time, small communities banded into larger settlements. Raid boats began to appear along the coasts, bringing obsidian from the islands of the north and precious stones from distant lands. Crete, located at the crossroads of Africa, Asia, and Europe, began to awaken to its destiny. It would not remain isolated. The sea would become its road, its shield, and its teacher. Historians now give this early period a name, the Prepalatial Era, a time before palaces and organized states, roughly beginning around the 4th millennium before the Common Era. But for those who lived it, this was simply life, steady, simple, and peaceful. Villages in places like Knossos, Phaistos, and Malea began to flourish. These humble settlements would one day become the centers of a sophisticated civilization, though no one yet knew what wonders would rise there. What made Crete special was not just its landscape or its strategic location, it was the spirit of the people. While other cultures of the ancient world would later become defined by conquest, defense, and fortification, the people of Crete seemed drawn instead to art, ritual, and connection. Their pottery was more elaborate than necessary. Their homes were arranged thoughtfully. They honored symbols, particularly the bull, the double axe. These symbols carried meaning, forming early hints of belief and tradition. You might wonder, were the Minoans one people, or many tribes that gradually formed unity? The truth is veiled in time. Archaeology offers pieces, but not certainty. No ancient storyteller left behind a myth of origin. No early historian documented their rise. There is only silence, broken by the artifacts they left behind. From these, we sense a people who lived close to the land, respected nature, and believed in life's cycles: birth, growth, decay, and renewal. Religion, though simple in this early period, was already present. Shrines made of stone and branches have been found on hilltops and in caves, suggesting the Cretans believed sacred forces dwelled in both earth and sky. They placed offerings of small clay figures, seashells, and animal bones to honor unseen powers. Perhaps they worshipped a mother goddess, a figure representing life and fertility, an idea shared by many ancient cultures. Or perhaps, even then, their spiritual world was more complex than what remains. As centuries passed, techniques shifted. Stone replaced mud brick. Metal tools made labor easier. Villages began to organize with shared courtyards and communal storehouses. Gradually, signs of early leadership appeared, not kings or soldiers, but administrators and ritual leaders who coordinated farming, trade, and ceremony. The seeds of civilization had been planted. Then came a moment of transformations, low and patient, like a shoreline shaped by endless waves. The Cretans began to build structures larger than any before. Not fortresses, but communal centers. Not barracks, but gathering places. The foundations of future palaces emerged, not as symbols of power, but of harmony and cooperation. And beneath this rise lay a mystery. How could such an early society grow so peacefully? Why do we find no evidence of conflict in their earliest remains? No stone walls for defense, no weapon stockpiles, no signs of invasion or destruction. It was as if Crete was sheltered, both by nature and by intention. Some believe the sea protected them from warlike neighbors. Others think their focus on trade, ritual, and prosperity gave little reason for conflict. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between. Whatever the reason, the world of the early Minoans was one of rhythm and continuity. They respected balance between sea and soil, between life and spirit, between progress and tradition. Their days were guided by the seasons, their nights by constellations. And yet, all of this, their culture, their beliefs, their elegant simplicity, was only the prelude to a much grander story. Soon, their villages would transform into bustling cities. Their pottery would evolve into masterpieces. Their buildings would rise into multi-level palaces filled with color and light. Their trade ships would glide across the Mediterranean, bringing wealth and influence. Crete was not destined to remain quiet. It was preparing for its golden age. But here, at the end of the first chapter in our journey, it is enough simply to pause. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine standing on one of those ancient Cretan hills. The air is gentle, carrying the soothing breath of sea winds. Below you, small stone homes cluster together like a family. Beyond them, fields stretch toward the horizon, golden with grain. A young civilization is waking, unaware of the beauty and mystery it will one day leave behind. This is how the world of the Minoans began, not with conquest, but with patience, not with war, but with wonder. And as the sun sets over this early landscape, casting long shadows over silent hills, we gently leave this first chapter. The story of the Minoans has begun, and there is so much more to come. In the next episode, we will step into the age of magnificence, the period when the Minoans reached the height of culture, art, and influence. Their palaces will rise, their ships will cross continents, and their identity will shine like a gem in the ancient world. But for now, let your thoughts drift like a calm tide and rest in the rhythm of the past. Let us return once more to the ancient island of Crete, where the air is soft and scented with wild sage and sea breeze. Time has moved forward from the simple beginnings of the early settlements. Generations have passed, and with each passing century, the people of Crete have shaped not only their land, but their destiny. You stand now at the dawn of what historians call the classical Minoan period, the era when the Minoan civilization rose to its brightest glory. Imagine the sun rising over gentle hills and far-off mountains dusted with morning mist. Below lies a great valley, and in the heart of that valley stands something extraordinary. It is no longer a small village, no longer a cluster of humble stone homes. Instead, you see a magnificent structure, vast, harmonious, and alive with people. This is the palace of Knossos, the largest and most radiant of all Minoan centers. It does not resemble a fortress. There are no walls of defense, no towers of intimidation, no heavy gates designed to keep enemies away. Instead, it feels open, welcoming, almost like a living organism. Corridors branch like veins, terraces rise like steps of a mountain, and rooms flow into each other in elegant sequence. Here, architecture seems to breathe. You step closer. The palace is built in soft, sun-colored stone and decorated with vivid colors, deep red, ocean blue, and gentle gold. Tall wooden pillars, tapered from top to bottom, stand like guardians of light, painted the color of wine. Inside, murals cover the walls, each stroke alive with beauty and movement. Dolphins swim across painted seas. Dancing figures celebrate rituals of life. Graceful women with dark curls and layered skirts carry offerings of flowers. Everything is serene, rhythmic, and elegant. This is the height of Minoan beauty. During this classical age, the Minoans perfected not only craftsmanship, but philosophy, the art of living well. While other ancient cultures carved stories of conquest onto temple walls, the Minoans painted life. They celebrated nature, sea, music, and perhaps most beautifully freedom of expression. In their world, art was not a luxury, it was life itself. The classical Minoan period marks a transformation. The scattered communities of early Crete evolved into organized centers of influence. 4 great palaces emerge: Knossos, Phaistos, Malea, and Zakrozic, connected by roads paved in smooth stone. These palaces were not royal residences alone. They were living centers of social, economic, religious, and cultural life. Inside their storerooms, rows of large clay jars, known as pothoi, held olive oil, wine, honey, and grain, treasures of the land. These goods flowed like rivers through a growing trade network. Ships crafted of Cretan timber sailed gracefully across calm waters, carrying goods not only to nearby islands, but as far as Egypt, Anatolia, Mesopotamia, and beyond. You can almost hear the sounds of the harbor's ropes tightening, ship masts creaking, sailors calling out over the waves. The Minoans were masters of the sea. They did not fear it, they befriended it. The sea gave them power, not of conquest, but of connection. Through trade, they wove a silent influence across the ancient world, one exchange at a time. Bronze ingots from Cyprus, fine linen from Egypt, glass beads from the Lavental found their way to the storerooms of Crete. In return, the Minoans sent delicate pottery, pure olive oil, carved stone vessels, and masterpieces of metalwork. The Minoans did not spread through war, they spread through wonder. Let your mind step now into the heart of palace life. The palace of Knossos alone is said to have had hundreds of rooms, grand halls, workshops, shrines, storerooms, and mysterious chambers whose purposes are still not fully known. Light wells allowed the sun to pour into the building, illuminating rooms naturally. Ingenious drainage systems brought fresh water inside centuries ahead of many other civilizations. Walk deeper and you will find rooms filled with quiet craft. A potter works with slow, practiced hands at a wheel, shaping a vessel so symmetrical it seems effortless. Nearby, an artisan engraves spirals into stone bowls, symbols echoing the cycles of life. In another area, women weave cloth dyed in rich earth tones, and skilled metalworkers shape bronze tools and jewelry. It is a society woven with precision and care. Now, step into the throne room of Knossos room, small and intimate despite its name. Its stone throne is simple, placed against a wall, painted with flowing patterns and watching griffins. Was this throne for a king? Or perhaps, as some scholars believe, for a priestess in service to a powerful goddess? Here begins a mystery of the Minoans, their leadership. Unlike Egypt with its pharaohs, or Mesopotamia with its warrior kings, Crete seems to have been ruled differently. There are few signs of absolute power, few monuments carved with grand boasts. Perhaps leadership was shared among priests and administrators. Some think women held high status rare in the ancient world. Feminine figures dominate Minoan frescoes, engaged not in servitude, but in ceremony and purpose. Their presence suggests a society where balance, not domination, guided life. Religion breathed quietly through daily life. The Minoans were not a people of vast temples. Instead, they worshipped in hilltop sanctuaries, sacred groves, and cave shrines. They honored the cycles of nature, the rising sun, the renewing rains, the fertile earth. Many rituals seemed to celebrate life, perhaps marking seeds planted, harvest gathered, and journeys begun. One symbol appears often, the labyrinth, a double-headed axe, not of battle, but of ceremony. Another is the bull, sacred to the Minoans, appearing in art and legend. In frescoes, young men and women leap over bulls in graceful arcs, in what appears to be a ceremonial sport. Was it a test of courage? A tribute to life and motion? We do not know, yet the image endures fluid, fearless, and alive. Writing emerged in this era as well. The Minoans developed scripts known to us today as Cretan, hieroglyphs, and linear A. These symbols remain only partly understood, preserving the secrets of their language like whispers behind ancient doors. It is as though the Minoans still speak, but in a language lost to time, and through it all the palaces, the art, the trade routes, the Minoans lived in a rare harmony. Archaeologists find little sign of division between classes. Common homes were not harshly separated from palatial centers. There were no slave armies, no prisons, no walls of defense. It is as though the Minoans trusted in something deeper than strength, the natural balance of life itself. Now, as this episode draws to a close, picture again the island at sunset. The palace of Knossos glows softly in golden light. Workers complete their day. Families gather for meals. Musicians play simple melodies to honor the evening. Smoke rises gently from cooking fires, and the scent of bread and herbs drifts through the air. The sea outside remains calm, carrying tomorrow's dreams upon its gentle waves. The classical period is the Minoan heartbeat, the time when this unique people reached their finest form, a civilization of grace, intelligence, peace, and artistry. But as with all great stories, even the brightest dawn will one day be followed by clouds. In our next chapter, whispers will drift across the sea voices from distant shores, carrying outside ideas and influences that will soon touch the island. The Minoans will remain strong, but change is on the horizon. For now, breathe deeply. Let the rhythm of Minoan life linger like a distant melody in your thoughts. Another chapter awaits, but tonight you may rest in the glow of this ancient golden age. Close your eyes for a moment and let your thoughts drift, as though you are floating gently upon a quiet sea. Sunlight dances across the rippling surface, and a soft breeze carries the faint scent of olive groves and sea salt. You find yourself once more in the Minoans, a thriving island civilization surrounded by the open embrace of the Mediterranean. In this chapter of their story, Crete no longer stands alone. The island has awakened, its people now seasoned navigators and master traders who journey beyond their shores. Slowly, gracefully, the world begins to reach back. Outside influences drift to Crete, not as storms, but as gentle tides bringing gifts of knowledge, art, and culture that the Minoans absorb with thoughtful curiosity. Imagine walking along a peaceful harbor at dawn. The horizon glows gold as the sun begins its ascent. At the pier, ships gently rock in the water, their hulls crafted from cedar and cypress, their sails woven from sturdy linen. These vessels no longer travel only between the villages of Crete. They journey far to the rich lands of Egypt, the mountains of Anatolia, the river valleys of Canaan, and the bustling ports of the Cycladic islands. Through these voyages, the Minoans create something rare in the ancient world, a network of friendship across the sea. From Egypt comes admiration. Egyptian scribes, who are known for recording every aspect of life, write of a distant island, people whom they call Kefti-believed by many historians to be the Minoans. In grand Egyptian tombs, frescoes and carvings show men in finely woven robes carrying gifts from Crete, metal bowls, rare oils, pottery of delicate shape and elegant curve. These scenes tell us something gentle, yet profound. The Minoans were respected, not feared. They were welcomed as trading partners, bearers of beauty and craftsmanship. And just as they offered their own goods, they also brought back treasures in return. From the banks of the Nile, they carried home fragrant papyrus, ivory carved with precision, and perfumes made from lotus and myrrh. They returned not only with material goods, but with new ways of seeing the world. Egyptian art, with its sense of order and grace, may have inspired Minoan artists to refine their own designs. The lotus flower, a symbol of life and purity in Egypt, begins to appear in Minoan decorative patterns, an early sign of artistic dialogue between cultures. Yet, Egypt was not the only distant influence to reach Crete. Sail farther to the east, across skies that glow amber at sunset, and you will find the land of Mesopotamia, the cradle of writing and organized law. Through trade routes that stretched across the ancient world, ideas traveled even faster than goods. The Minoans did not adopt foreign systems blindly, but they were keen observers. From Mesopotamia, they learned about sealing documents with engraved stones-ornate cylinder seals that marked ownership and authenticity. Soon, the Minoans adapted this practice, creating their own seal stones, carved with spirals, sacred animals, and mythic symbols. Writing itself began to evolve further during this era, while earlier Minoan scripts appeared simple and symbolic. The development of linear A allowed them to record inventories, transactions, and rituals with greater precision. Though this script still remains undeciphered today, each symbol carved into clay tells us that the Minoans valued organization, memory, and progress. They learned from others, but remained themselves. Now let us journey north, across waters that deepen into a serene blue. Scattered like stepping stones across the sea lie the Cycladic Islands. These islands were among Crete's first trading partners, linked by shared beauty and love for artistic expression. From them, the Minoans may have adopted the use of marble in small figurines, simple, elegant shapes that almost seem to breathe with quiet dignity. In return, Minoan pottery, with its sweeping lines and natural motifs, reached Cycladic homes and found admiration. To the northeast lay Anatolia, a rugged land rich in metals. From its mountain streams and riverbeds came copper and tinda, two elements that, when combined, formed bronze. The Minoans already knew the art of bronze fabrication, but Anatolia provided a steady supply of raw material. Bronze tools made farming easier, shipbuilding stronger, and artistic detail more precise. In return, Minoan craftsmen offered jewelry, crafted not only to adorn the body, but to express a sense of harmony with nature. Yet, the most fascinating exchange that took place between the Minoans and their neighbors was not of goods, but of ideas. Religion, myth, and symbol flowed freely across borders, carried by the stories of sailors and travelers. Some traditions show striking resemblance. For example, the reverence for a powerful mother goddess appears in both Crete and the ancient Near East. Likewise, the bulan animal frequently depicted in Minoan rituals was also sacred in parts of Anatolia and Mesopotamia. But what makes the Minoan story so peaceful, so unique, is the way these influences were absorbed. The Minoans did not lose their identity. They did not become reflections of the cultures they touched. Instead, they seemed to ask a quiet question of each new idea they encountered. Does this enrich life? If the answer was yes, they welcomed it. If not, they let it drift away. Through gentle adaptation, they built a civilization that was not isolated, but connected, not dominant, but influential. They became part of a cultural conversation that stretched across 3 continents: Africa, Asia, and Europe, long before the idea of global exchange had taken shape. Walk now through a Minoan marketplace. It is lively, but not chaotic. Colorful woven cloth is folded on wooden tables. Fresh figs and grapes lie in clay baskets. At another stall, a trader from Cyprus displays polished copper ingots that gleam under the sun. Beside him, a Minoan artisan offers a small stone vessel carved so delicately it is as smooth as polished shell. Voices mingle in many languages, yet smiles bridge any gap in understanding. Beyond the marketplace, the palaces of Crete continue to grow in beauty. Frescoes now show foreign visitors, ships from distant shores, and plants not native to the island. Minoan art becomes a mirror of a world in motion, yet always retains its celebration of peace, joy, and connection to nature. It is here, in this era of graceful exchange, that the Minoans achieved something rare. They proved that a civilization could grow strong through cooperation rather than domination, through curiosity rather than conquest. Their island became a shining example of balanced prosperity where progress and tradition walked together like old friends. As the sun begins to set over the peaceful city of Knossos, long shadows stretch across its courtyards. The day is ending, but the world of the Minoans is only expanding. They have welcomed the world into their harbors, and in doing so, they have stepped fully into their place in history, not as conquerors, but as creators and connectors. For now, let the gentle rhythm of their world linger in your heart. The sea continues to whisper around Crete, and its people continue to listen, not with fear, but with wonder. The morning air rests gently over Crete as the first blush of sunlight stretches across the land. The salty sea breeze, the hum of merchants preparing their goods, and the distant laughter of children create a peaceful symphony that welcomes a new day. You stand on a hillside overlooking the great palace of Knossos, and for a moment you simply breathe. Before you lies a world in perfect balance, an island civilization that has grown not through power or conquest, but through harmony and creativity. This is the Minoan Golden Age. You descend the hill along a smooth stone path bordered by olive trees. Their silver-green leaves shimmer softly in the fresh light. Everything around you feels calm and abundant. Fields of barley sway in the breeze. Terraces of grapevines cling gracefully to the hillsides. Clusters of pomegranate trees glow with ruby fruit. There is no rush here, no harshness. Life flows in an unhurried rhythm that seems to follow the pulse of the earth itself. As you approach the palace of Knossos, it rises before you like a living canvas. Terraces of red columns and white limestone pillars support open courtyards. Stairways wind elegantly downward and upward with ease. Bright frescoes decorate nearly every wall, telling stories not of war, but of joyful life, dancers, nature, rituals, and the sea. Unlike other grand structures in the ancient world, this palace does not intimidate, it does not dominate. Instead, it invites. This is not a palace of a king, it is a palace of a people. Though later historians gave the name palace, this great building is less a royal residence and more a center of life. It is a marketplace, a storage facility, a place of ceremony, administration, art, and community. Like the heart of a living body, it organizes the flow of goods and ideas across the island. Grain, olive oil, wine, wool, textiles, pottery, all are recorded, distributed, and shared for the benefit of the island. Here, you see cooperation in motion. Everywhere you look, daily life thrives. In the eastern courtyard, farmers unload baskets of grain from donkey carts. Inside, scribes gently press symbols into wet clay tablets, using wooden styluses, keeping careful track of harvests and trade. In the workshops, artisans carve stone vases, create bronze tools, and polish finely crafted jewelry of gold and lapis lazuli. Not far away, loom workers weave cloth dyed with brilliant saffron and sea purple, colors that reflect the island's beauty. The building hums like a bee colony, busy but peaceful. No raised voices, no guards standing watch, just the gentle industry of people working together. Walk now through the hall of the double axes, where the walls are painted with swirling red and blue spirals. These spirals symbolize motion, the endless flow of life. You feel it too. The Minoans do not fear change, they welcome it. They have learned to move gracefully with time. In another chamber, known as the Queen's Megaron, you discover one of the most soothing scenes in all of Minoan art. Dolphins dance across a wall of sea blue, surrounded by drifting fish. Sunlight filters in through a carved window, creating just enough warmth to bring the scene to life. Standing here, you feel the Minoans' deep connection to the sea, not as conquerors of it, but as companions. The more you explore, the more you begin to understand something quietly astonishing about this civilization. It is built upon balance, a balance between land and sea, between structure and freedom, between beauty and function. Now walk outside the palace and step into the city around it. Life here stretches far beyond Knossos. Across Crete, other palace centers flourish Phaistos in the fertile Mazara plain to the south, Malea along the northern coast, Zakros nestled close to the eastern shores where traders arrive from distant lands. Each palace reflects the same style of open-air architecture, advanced storage systems, and intricate frescoes. Yet each also celebrates local character. Though they are separate, they are not rivals. Instead, they work together in peaceful unity. It is during this time that Minoan culture reaches a level of refinement unmatched in the Bronze Age. Their architecture becomes remarkably advanced. Buildings feature light wells that draw sunlight deep into the structure. Stone drainage systems carry away rainwater. Clay pipes transport fresh water between floors, an innovation far ahead of many civilizations that would come centuries later. Even their art evolves beyond simple representation. The Minoans do not just paint what they see, they paint what they feel. Nature is not a backdrop, it is a partner in life. Lilies curve with elegant motion across pottery. Birds stretch their wings above rolling hills. Spirals flow endlessly, like the rhythm of waves. Everything has energy, everything connects. Music, though lost to time, must have filled their gatherings. You can almost hear its soft flutes, rhythmic drums, and the gentle strumming of string instruments called lyres. Dance, too, holds a beloved place in Minoan life, not for battle or competition, but for celebration of harvests, of seasons, of joy itself. Religion during this era also blossoms. Shrines and peak sanctuaries appear across the island, often high in the mountains or deep in caves. These places are not meant to isolate the divine, but to connect it to nature. Rituals involve offerings of flowers, fruits, small clay figurines, or simple symbols of gratitude, while the details of Minoan belief are still a mystery. Their art and temples reflect a deep respect for life, renewal, and natural harmony. Perhaps most fascinating of all, women hold an especially visible role in Minoan society. Frescoes and seals depict women as priestesses, leaders of ceremonies, and participants in the cultural life of the island. Unlike many ancient cultures, the Minoans seem to celebrate balance between men and women, not as opposites, but as partners. Life here moves in cycles, not hierarchies. Trade has also reached new heights. Minoan ships glide confidently across the sea, painted with curved eyes on their bows, as though they too can see the ocean ahead. They carry pottery, oil, wine, fine textiles, and crafted goods to distant harbors. In return, precious metals, ivory, obsidian, and exotic spices journey back to Crete. Yet Minoan trade is more than economic, it is cultural. With every voyage, they bring home new ideas, tools, and stories. And still, amid such growth, peace endures. On this island, there are no fortress walls, no war chariots, no weapons of conquest. Archaeologists have long marveled at this. How did a civilization so prosperous avoid conflict for so long? The answer, perhaps, lies in the gentle strength of their values: cooperation, creativity, and respect for life. As evening falls, lanterns flicker to life throughout Nasus. Musicians gather in the courtyard. Families share meals of olives, figs, barley bread, and fish fresh from the sea. A singing voice begins, soft and warm. Children dance barefoot in the dust, and somewhere in the distance, waves roll softly onto the familiar shore, whispering the same message they have carried for generations. Live with the world, not against it. For now, the Minoans have achieved something rare in age, where art, nature, and life exist in harmony. You close your eyes and let the peace of this moment settle within you. The golden age of Crete is not a dream, it is a memory gently preserved by time. And though centuries will pass and history will shift like sand beneath the tide, the beauty of this era will never be forgotten. You feel the shifting of time not as an abrupt break, but as a quiet change in rhythm, like the slow fading of a summer breeze before autumn makes itself known. Crete, which once moved with effortless harmony, now enters a different season of its story. Life continues. The sun still kisses the vineyards, and the sea still hums its ancient melody. Yet something subtle has changed. The island breathes a little slower now, as if listening for something it cannot yet name. You stand once again at the harbor, watching fishermen guide their slender boats toward the shore. Nets filled with silver-scaled fish glisten in the morning light. There is still abundance here, still life and work and laughter, but beneath it runs a quiet undercurrent of unease. The traders who once arrived from every corner of the sea now come less often. The ships from Cyprus, Egypt, and Anatolia appear with longer and longer pauses between them, like words spoken with growing uncertainty. Crete is not alone in experiencing this shift. Across the wide world of the Bronze Age, winds of change are stirring. You have heard travelers speak of unrest far away of kingdoms in the east struggling to keep their trade roads safe, of political shifts in Mesopotamia, and of rising powers across the sea in the Greek mainland. These stories drift in like wandering leaves, each one small and light, but together they create a quiet storm in the minds of the Minoan people. There is no alarm, no panic-only questions. You walk away from the harbor and follow the road inland, where farmlands rest under a pale sky. Here you see the first traces of strain. In earlier seasons, the earth seemed to reward every seed that touched it. Barley swayed, tall olives hung thick on the branches, and vineyards draped the hills like emerald cloth. But now the land seems weary. The rains do not fall as they once did. The sun lingers long and heavy on the soil, and wells must be dug deeper to reach water. Still, the people continue to plant and harvest. They adapt, as they always have. They share what they have. No one goes without. But even as life continues, there is a quiet truth known to every farmer: you can nurture the land, but you cannot control it. Nature gives, and sometimes nature rests. Traveling north, you arrive once again at Nasus. From a distance, the palace still glows with dignity and poise, its red columns rising proudly above the hill. But as you walk its familiar halls, signs of care and repair become more noticeable. Some stones have been reset. Walls show new layers of plaster. Frescoes that once shone with fresh colors have lost some of their brightness. The palace still stands strong, a symbol of resilience, but you can feel the weight of time beginning to gather in its corners. Life continues within its walls. The storerooms still hold jars of oil and baskets of barley. Scribes still record shipments and trade agreements. Artisans still craft vases, jewelry, and woven cloth. But the pace has slowed. These halls, once filled with the vibrant energy of a growing civilization, now echo with a quieter rhythm, steady but cautious. You pause by a clay tablet covered in signs of the linear A script, and you notice something unusual. There are more records now of supplies held back, of goods preserved, of reserves stored for future seasons. These are not signs of fear, but of preparation and acknowledgement that prosperity comes in cycles. Even the calmest sea carries both crest and trough. One evening, you gather at a hilltop sanctuary where the Minoans honor the spirit of nature. The air is cool and fragrant with burning herbs. People stand in a circle, not in sorrow, but in quiet gratitude, offering thanks for what they still have. A woman places a basket of grain at the altar and whispers a gentle prayer. A child follows, setting down a carved wooden dove, a symbol of peace and hope. There is no desperation in their ritual, only humility, gentle acceptance of life's changing seasons. Soon after, as you travel east toward the region of Palaxtro, the earth begins to tremble beneath your feet. It is a small, tremor, gentle, brief, but enough to remind you that Crete lies on restless ground. The people here do not fear these movements. They know the earth sometimes shifts as it dreams beneath the mountains. Homes are repaired, walls are strengthened, life continues. Yet no one can ignore what arrives next, a distant thunder that is not from the sky, but from across the sea. To the north, beyond the horizon, lies the island of Thera. In peaceful times, its people traded with Crete. They sent pottery, timber, and precious metals. But now the island grows strangely silent. The Minoans hear stories from sailors of strange tremors, of ash falling like gray snow, of the sea pulling away from the shore, only to return in waves that feel heavier than before. And then one day, the sky over the northern sea begins to change. A pale haze drifts above the water. Dust settles on rooftops and fields. Not heavy at first, just a whisper from afar. But it is a reminder, gentle yet solemn, that even the strongest civilizations live beneath the same sky. Nature connects all things, creation and change, birth and memory. The Minoans do not curse the sky, they do not despair. They gather together, share food, repair homes, distribute supplies from palace storage, and care for one another. For even in the face of uncertainty, they are a people rooted not in conquest, but in community. You walk to a lookout point near the sea. The horizon appears misty, now touched by a faint cloud that stretches across the world. Yet the waters below remain calm, washing the shore with the same patient rhythm they always have. You watch as workers unload baskets of olives from a small ship. Children chase each other along the sand. Fishermen mend their nets with unrushed hands. Life in Crete does not collapse, and in this moment you understand. Civilizations do not fade in a single heartbeat. They change slowly, tenderly, like the passing of seasons. The Minoan world, once defined by effortless abundance, now enters an age that will ask more of its people, more endurance, more wisdom, more unity. But this is not a tragedy. This is life. For even in times of quiet trial, there remains beauty found in shared meals, in repaired homes, in songs sung to comfort the heart. The Minoans face their challenges the only way they know, how, with hands that build, spirits that endure, and hearts turned toward hope. As you stand beside the sea, you close your eyes for a moment. The breeze feels cooler now. Autumn has arrived in the story of Crete, but it is not an ending. It is simply another chapter, softer chapter, perhaps, but rich with lessons that would echo far beyond their time. Tomorrow is uncertain, but tonight the island rests, wrapped in the gentle glow of a civilization that still believes in harmony, even as the world begins to change. You open your eyes to a morning where the sky above Crete is clear and calm. The sea below, once restless and uncertain in earlier seasons, now stretches out with a quiet steadiness. Life has not returned to what it once was, yet day by day the island has found its rhythm again. You feel it as you walk along a restored path lined with olive trees. Renewal, not sudden and dramatic, but patient, deliberate, and wise. The Minoans have endured quiet trials. They have seen their fields challenged by seasons of strain, their palaces touched by trembling earth, and their skies hazed by distant change. But they did not fade. Instead, they adjusted, rediscovered their balance, and turned their attention toward building again, this time with more thought than ever before. You travel to Nessus, where signs of renewal wait at every step. The palace that once showed marks of time has now been carefully restored. Walls have been replastered, storage rooms reorganized, staircases mended. The palace does not sparkle with the untested brightness of youth, but with the calm confidence of experience. This is not a return to the past, it is a thoughtful step toward a new era. As you enter the grand central courtyard, you notice changes in the way people work. There are new symbols on clay tablets and new methods of organization. Scribes, once using a writing system known as Linear A, now begin recording goods and transactions with a new script. Linear B, the shapes are different, more structured, more systematic. These signs did not appear alone. They came through interaction with a new partner in the Aegean world, the Mycenaeans of mainland Greece. Their presence is not overwhelming. There are no marching armies, no conquerors. Instead, their arrival in Crete feels like the gentle merging of two rivers. The Mycenaeans are traders, administrators, and sailors who admire the refinement of Minoan culture. Over time, they settle among the Minoan people, not as masters, but as collaborators. Their influence is seen in practical matters: accounting, record-keeping, and palace administration. They bring new tools, new ship designs, and new approaches to trade, but they also adopt Minoan art, religion, and customs, blending their culture with that of Crete. You walk into one of the palace storerooms, where a Mycenaean scribe and a Minoan record-keeper work together in quiet cooperation. Amphorae filled with olive oil are stacked neatly beside jars of honey and bundles of wool. Each item is marked not only with Minoan symbols, but also with new Mycenaean markings. There are no disputes. Here everything is calmly catalogued and stored, ready to sustain the island through future seasons. Outside the palace, the sounds of construction echo through the air. Workshops are busy again. Woodworkers shape beams for new homes. Potters' wheels spin once more. Bronze is poured into molds and shaped into tools, chisels, and fine blades, not for war, but for work. The Minoans have always valued craft over conflict, and this remains unchanged. You pass a row of weavers, women and men alike, patiently guiding threads across broad wooden looms. The cloth they produce is finer than before dyed, with renewed skill and woven with patterns inspired by both Minoan tradition and Mycenaean geometry. As you move through the city, you feel a striking harmony in the air. Children play along the stone paths. Farmers carry baskets overflowing with grain, olives, and fig signs that the fields, too, are recovering. Terraced farms have been expanded to manage water more carefully. New irrigation channels carry precious water from hillside springs to distant vineyards. The land is tended with a deeper understanding now, shaped by experience and patience. Traveling south to Phaistos, another palace center, you see how modernization has reached the Messara plain. Phaistos once reflected the pure elegance of Minoan design. Today, it has evolved. The courtyards have been widened for larger gatherings. Warehouses have been expanded for increased trade. Decorative frescoes, once focused solely on nature and life, now include patterns of spirals, rosettes, and even linear motifs, the subtle mark of Mycenaean artistic influence. Yet nothing has replaced Minoan identity. Instead, the culture has matured into a blend, still graceful, still peaceful, but more structured. You continue east toward the Palace of Zakros, closest to the great trade routes of the eastern Mediterranean. This port city now thrives more than ever. Ships from Cyprus, Anatolia, Canaan, and Egypt once again arrive in the harbor. But among them are also ships bearing new banners, the emblems of Mycenaean merchants. Their vessels are sturdier, built to carry heavier cargo over longer voyages. The Minoans study these ship designs with curiosity, adopting new features for their own fleets. Their shipbuilders do not resist change, they refine it. Along the harbor, a sense of purpose fills the air. Dock workers lift crates of copper and tin materials essential for bronze making. Traders inspect pottery painted with marine motifs, octopus, dolphins, and graceful sea plants. In exchange, Cretan wine and olive oil travel across the sea, reaching new markets and returning with goods once rare, fine ivory, colorful glass beads, and woven linen from Egypt. The world is growing smaller, and Crete stands once again at its center, not alone, but connected. You leave the coast and walk inland toward the highlands, where peak sanctuaries rise above the earth. These mountaintop shrines have witnessed the passage of every era. Here, the Minoans once offered thanks for harvests and safe voyages. Here, they prayed for renewal during quiet trials. And now, here again, they continue their rituals, not in desperation, but in quiet continuity. You stand among them as the sun sinks low over the mountains. A simple ceremony unfolds, not elaborate, but sincere. Offerings of fruit, milk, and flowers rest upon a stone altar. A priestess, wearing a woven robe, lifts her hands, not in plea, but in gratitude. The Mycenaeans, too, have joined these observances, not to change them, but to understand them. They do not replace Minoan faith. Instead, they accept its gentle strength. From this height, you can see the island stretch in every direction, its fertile plains, its quiet coves, its lively towns. The palaces of Crete no longer belong to a single power. They are now centers of cooperation, where Minoan grace and Mycenaean practicality work together. The island has transformed, not through conquest, but through adaptation. As night begins to fall, you return to Nasus. Lanterns light the palace halls. Workers finish their tasks for the day. Children return to their families. In the courtyard, musicians gather under an open sky. You sit among them as soft music flows from lyres and flutes. The melody is familiar, yet new, like the island itself. A civilization once known only for peaceful beauty now carries quiet resilience as well. Crete has changed. The world around it has too. But change has not taken away its identity. Instead, it has shaped it. The Minoans have entered a new era not defined by decline, but by transformation. They do not cling to the past. They move forward with it. You close your eyes, feeling the calm of this moment. The journey of Crete is not over, it continues, steady as the sea. The path ahead may hold uncertainty, but it also holds possibility. And as long as the island listens to the rhythm of life and keeps faith in the harmony that shaped it, its story will move forward, quietly, beautifully, and with purpose. You stand once more at the edge of the sea. The water before you is calm, a blue expanse that stretches endlessly across the horizon. Over countless years in this journey through the life of the Minoan civilization, you have watched them rise, flourish, endure crisis, and transform. Yet now, in this 7th chapter, you witness something even more remarkable. The Minoans, though small in land and number, quietly shape the world far beyond the shores of Crete. They do not do so through conquest or domination. Instead, their influence spreads like a gentle tides, steady, patient, and enduring. The Mediterranean Sea has often been called the cradle of civilizations, but for the Minoans, it is something more personal. It is a familiar road. The sea carries them outward in every direction, linking them to lands that once seemed distant and unknown. You can almost see their ships now, gliding over the waves, each hull crafted from strong timber, each sail catching the soft wind. These vessels embody not just engineering, but identity. They are floating ambassadors of Minoan ingenuity, artistry, and curiosity. Picture yourself aboard one of these ships. The deck is smooth beneath your feet. Rope lines sway gently with the rhythm of the sea. Crates and sealed jars of precious cargo fill the hull. Ceramics painted with swirling marine motifs, obsidian blades polished like glass, olive oil sealed in elegant amphorae, fragrant herbs gathered from Cretan hillsides, and cloth dyed in vivid colors using rare pigments. Everything on this vessel has a purpose. Everything tells a story. Your destination, perhaps the Nile Delta, where Egypt welcomes visitors with golden sunlight and monumental stone. Or perhaps the coast of Canaan, where bustling ports hum like beehives of trade and conversation. Or perhaps Cyprus, with its rich copper mines, where metalsmiths transform earth into enduring tools. Wherever you travel, you find traces of the Minoans, not through monuments of power, but through threads of connection. The world beyond Crete is not isolated. Civilizations are beginning to notice one another, sometimes tentatively, sometimes eagerly. In this slow awakening of international exchange, the Minoans become something extraordinary, builders of bridges. Their role is quiet but profound. They do not seek to be rulers. They choose to be weavers. They braid together ideas, languages, materials, and beliefs into a living tapestry of cultural exchange. When Egyptians admire Minoan pottery, they are not simply purchasing luxury goods. They are embracing new aesthetics. When merchants in the Levant adopt Minoan measuring systems, they are embracing new standards of trade. When the Mycenaeans adapt elements of Minoan writing, they are embracing new ways of recording thought. The influence of Crete travels not as command, but as invitation. Imagine stepping onto Egyptian soil with the Minoan traders. You are greeted by scribes, priests, and noble families, each one intrigued not only by the goods you bring, but by your presence itself. They ask about your language, your customs, the nature of your intricate palaces that seem to have grown from the very earth rather than been imposed upon it. And in return, they offer wonders of their own: fine linen, papyrus rolls, brilliant stones that glimmer like stars. From them, the Minoans learn new technologies, mathematics for measurement, pigments for painting, and practices for large-scale administration. Nothing is taken by force. Everything is exchanged with thoughtfulness. Now return to the north, where you find yourself sailing among the Cycladic islands, those silent, white sculpted isles that seem to float upon the sea. Here again, the Minoans are known. Their artisans share new techniques for pottery wheels and fresco colors. Their architects teach the harmony of open courtyards and columned light. Their sailors map safe passages through unpredictable straits. In return, the Minoans adopt regional stone carving techniques and new forms of metallurgy. The relationship is mutually enriching. Travel westward, and you reach the growing settlements of mainland Greece. In these places, young Mycenaean communities look to Crete as an older sibling of civilization. They admire the efficiency of Minoan administration, the disciplined order of storage magazines, the careful use of accounting symbols, the confidence of maritime travel. You watch as Mycenaean officials observe Minoan scribes marking tablets of clay and wonder at this elegant system. Over time, elements of the Minoan script, known now as Linear AR, adapted into Linear B, an early form of writing for the Greek language. This influence is subtle but profound. Even language begins to cross the sea. The Minoans leave traces on temples, ships, governance, and commerce, but perhaps their deepest legacy is the idea of peaceful prosperity. In a world where many societies glorify conquest, the Minoans show another way: progress through exchange, stability through balance, and accomplishment through cooperation. Their palaces were not citadels built for war, but centers of organization, innovation, religion, and art. Their fleets were not armies at sea, but networks of contact. Their leaders were not tyrants, but facilitators. You might pause and ask what allowed this civilization to play such a central role. The answer lies not only in where they lived, but in how they lived. Geography was their opportunity. Philosophy was their guide. The island of Crete lies at the heart of ancient trade routes, but it is the Minoan character, their openness to new ideas, that transformed opportunity into influence. They were skilled at listening, observing, and refining. Wherever they traveled, they absorbed wisdom and returned it enhanced. Even their art speaks this language of connection. Look closely at a Minoan fresco, and you will see movement everywhere: leaping dolphins, flowing hair, swirling waves, drifting flowers. Life is never static in their world. Everything is part of a larger rhythm, a shared pulse among land and sea. Their architecture follows the same philosophy. Light enters from multiple angles. Paths are winding, inviting exploration. Spaces are built to gather people rather than divide them. Their spiritual beliefs, too, reflect a deep respect for the natural world. In place of towering statues of thunder gods or solar deities, their shrines honor life around them: trees, mountains, flowing water, and the ever-present sea. This quiet reverence shapes their relationships with other civilizations. Rather than seeking dominion, they seek understanding. Rather than claiming superiority, they seek harmony. As you walk through a Minoan port, you might hear sailors from 5 or 6 lands speaking in a chorus of accents, each person exchanging goods and ideas. You might see an artisan from Anatolia learning pottery techniques from a craftsman of Knossos, or a merchant from Byblus sharing aromatic cedarwood, soon to be carved into delicate chests adorned with spirals and lilies. You might find an Egyptian priest observing a Minoan ritual dance not to judge, but to learn. In these interactions, you glimpse a truth. The Minoans are not simply participants in history, they are connectors of worlds. Their influence stretches far beyond the physical borders of Crete. Concepts they share ripple outward for generations. Their maritime roots survive long after their ships are gone. Their trade networks become the foundation of classical economies. Their organizational systems inspire palace cultures on the Greek mainland. Their art travels into the Aegean imagination. Even their approach to life celebrating beauty, movement, balance echoes faintly in future philosophies. They are not forgotten, even when their language becomes silent. And now, as you stand again beneath the soft Mediterranean sky, you begin to understand why historians speak of the Minoans with quiet awe. Without armies, they shaped a region. Without empires, they built a legacy. Their role in the ancient world is not one of conquest or domination, but of connection. They remind us that history is not only moved by force, it is carved and carried also by hands that build, minds that wonder, and hearts that welcome the unknown. The sea remains before you, tranquil and endless. You sense that the story of the Minoans still continues across its waters, carried in every shared language, every borrowed symbol, every tradition that began as a whisper on the island of Crete. And as gentle waves wash upon the ancient shore, you feel a quiet understanding the Minoans were not simply shaped by the world. They helped shape the world itself. You stand on a quiet hill overlooking the island of Crete. The sun is setting, painting the sky in gentle shades of amber and rose. The air is still, and for a moment the world feels paused between past and present. You have wandered far through the story of the Minoans, through their beginnings in sheltered valleys, their rise in art and architecture, their exchanges with distant lands, their renewal after hardship, and their role as silent shapers of the ancient world. Now you arrive at the final chapter, not an ending, but a reflection. The Minoans no longer walk these hills. Their cities, once alive with voices, festivals, and sea salt winds, now sleep beneath the soil. Yet, as you close your eyes, you begin to notice something profound. Though time has passed, their legacy has not faded. It lingers not only in stone and clay, but in ideas that traveled beyond their shores and live quietly in the world, you know. Look closer at the ruins scattered across Crete. At first glance, they seem simple broken columns, fallen walls, the silent patterns of an ancient floor. But listen deeper. These are not remains of overpowering fortresses or watchtowers. They speak, instead of something else, a life guided by harmony. The palace of Knossos was not a fortress, but a center of learning, art, storage, gathering, writing, and celebration. In Phaistos, Malea, and Zakros, buildings were designed not merely to survive, but to welcome light. Light mattered to the Minoans. Spaces were built so that sunlight would flow gently through columns and courtyards, illuminating walls painted with sea creatures and flowering fields. It was as though their architecture whispered an idea that life should be both functional and beautiful. Beauty to the Minoans was not a luxury, it was a way of honoring existence. Their frescoes did not glorify kings seated on thrones or armies marching across lands. Instead, they painted swallows dancing in spring air, lilies bending in the breeze, dolphins gliding through clear waters. They painted movement, joy, nature, and the rhythm of life. Through their art, they left behind a gentle lesson that civilization can celebrate peace. Now imagine the thread of influence carried from this island to the world beyond. The Mycenaeans embraced Minoan architecture and symbols. Ancient Greece would inherit stories, techniques, and maritime routes shaped by Minoan minds. Later, classical Greek culture would influence Rome. Rome would shape Europe and the Mediterranean. And in ways both quiet and immense, human history today carries fragments of Minoan thought. When you walk beneath a building supported by elegant columns, there is a whisper of the Minoans. When an artist paints with movement rather than stillness, there is a hint of their hand. When a society chooses trade over war, culture over dominance, cooperation over isolation, there too is a reflection of their world. Though the Minoan script, known as Linear A, remains unreadable, you can still feel their voice. Writing is not only symbols on clay, it is the intent behind them. These people recorded thoughts, managed resources, organized their society, and developed systems of shared responsibility. They practiced governance not through force, but through structure. Their administrative systems laid foundations for the palace economies of later civilizations. Even without knowing their precise words, you can understand their values by the world they built. Stand now before the sea as they once did. Watch the water ripple in long silver lines. The Minoans believed deeply in the cycle of renewal. Seasons turned, seas shifted, and life returned. They trusted in rhythm, the rising and falling of waves, the turning of stars, the quiet certainty of dawn after night. And so, even as their civilization transformed and later faded, something essential endured. Their story did not disappear. It flowed forward. Their courage was not loud. It did not roar like a warrior's cry. It was the quiet courage of builders who shaped harbors and storage systems so communities could thrive. It was the courage of sailors who navigated open seas, not with fear, but with curiosity. It was the courage of artisans who believed that creativity belonged in daily life. It was the courage of a people who trusted that the world could be connected not only by power, but by exchange, learning, and shared experience. And perhaps that is why their legacy still feels alive today. You do not need to conquer to be remembered. You do not need to dominate to make history. The Minoans remind you that true influence lives in what is shared: ideas, art, values, and hope. Walk now through the imagined streets of ancient Nasus. Hear the distant echo of pottery wheels turning in workshops. Smell the fragrance of olive oil warming in clay jars. See children running along terraces, their laughter rising toward blue skies. Life here once moved in flowing rhythm work, festival, song, craft, travel, return. This rhythm, this balanced way of being, remains within reach, even across millennia. Their greatest legacy is not a monument. It is a message woven gently through time. Civilization thrives when it honors connection to the land, to creativity, to others, and to the future. Looking once more toward the horizon, you understand that history is not a distant story. It is a mirror. The Minoans lived with open hands and open hearts, and their world became a crossroads of knowledge. Your world, too, is built on relationships, shared discoveries, shared dreams, shared paths forward. Like them, you are part of a greater journey of humanity. The wind shifts softly around you, carrying the scent of the sea. In this moment, you feel the presence of all the stories you have heard, not as memories, but as gentle companions. You realize that time does not bury truth, tarries it, and so the spirit of the Minoans remains, not as a lost civilization, but as a living reminder that progress can be peaceful, that wisdom can be kind, and that beauty is a form of strength. As twilight deepens, stars awaken above the ancient land. You breathe in, calm and unhurried. The journey through the history of the Minoans has been long, yet it does not truly end. It simply becomes part of your own path, a quiet legacy you carry with you. Because history lives wherever curiosity continues, wherever understanding grows, and wherever we choose to build rather than destroy. The Minoans showed the world one enduring truth, that a small place can shape a great story, and that gentle hands can leave a lasting mark upon time. And so, as night settles softly over Crete, you smile with gratitude for the sea, for the story, and for the civilization that taught the world how to thrive in harmony. The waves whisper along the shore, and in their rhythm you hear a final message carried across ages. The past is never truly gone, it waits patiently for us to listen.